Hello, hello.
Hey, hi. Good to see you again, Scott. It's been so long.
Oh yeah. Well, actually it has. It
Couple
has. We've all
weeks.
been
2 weeks.
busy with Flutter IO and then with work.
Yep.
Flutter's really taking off. I've had a couple of other contacts reaching out to me saying, asking if I'm available for jobs, and I just not at the moment. I wish I was. I wish
I'm
I was in a
seeing
way.
I've got all my usual sources sending me a Flutter job pretty much every day now.
Yeah.
It's really,
It's
really
taking
nice.
off.
But right now I have a project. I'm really excited about the project, but I can't tell you a thing about it. I'm sorry, NDAs and all that.
Well, I can tell you that I am doing developer relations
Yeah.
now
Oh
for a
yeah.
company called AppCircle.io. We do CI/CD. We'll go
Mm-hmm.
into that later. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we'll go into that another day. But that's my current gig, and I'm also doing some teaching stuff for myself on the side.
Yep.
But really,
we should probably introduce ourselves too, just for the in case it's
why?
the first time. Yeah, in
You mean
case
the
it's
whole
the
world
first
doesn't know
time.
us?
You wish, but not yet.
Uh,
We're getting there.
Well, I am Scott Stahl. I have been in Flutter since September of 2017. When we first started, we didn't have any community. We didn't have a Medium. We didn't have Slacks. And I was looking around saying, I'm not going to spend my life on Stack Overflow. I refuse. So we started getting together and pulling people together. And we've been doing that for 3 years. Now the Medium's got over 1,200 articles, over 1 million minutes read, like every 20 days now. It's crazy. We've got this. We've got, if you're not a member of the Flutter Community Slack, get there. It's over 13,000 members right now. Okay, if you can't get a question answered there, you're in bad shape.
There are a lot of experts there, and me.
Really?
So I don't.
And I just kind of look for spam and delete it, but
Yeah. And I'm Randall Schwartz. I've been a GDE Google Developer Expert for Flutter and Dart. Even before Please started. Are we not live yet? We were live. Okay, sorry. I'm getting old chat. That's not fair. I thought it's delayed our direction, not their direction. Anyway, so I'm back to the topic. I'm a Google Developer Expert since even before they had the label for Dart and Flutter. They gave me the web label for a little while because that's all they had for a title. But what that means is I spend a lot of my time going over everything that's listed from flutter.dev/community. So there are a lot of different communities, not just Slack that Scott mentioned, but I also watch Stack Overflow. I watch Reddit. I used to watch Facebook, but I've decided no, not anymore. I'm not going to waste my time there anymore. Try code there. Just crazy. It's not working. And all the other places and the Slack communities and Discord in particular. I spend a lot of time on Discord, far too much for the benefit of
Discord's really good though.
Yeah,
it's good.
It is. I like Slack threading occasionally, but I hate it more than I like it. And so Discord, there's no threading, but there is reply to. So at least you can keep a thread of conversation over a length of time in case that goes that way. But anyway, what it means is I spend most of my spare hours, whatever those are anymore, doing Dart and Flutter, answering questions, posting little snippets. I have a screencast, what do they call it? Screen share? What the heck do I do? Screencast, right. That I produce various videos on things that I see people ask the same question more than twice or three times. Boom, you're going to get a video because I've had some of my videos referred to hundreds of times, especially about Future Builder and Stream Builder, because people make a lot of mistakes with those two things real easily. And so that's what I do most of the time. And then I have two main clients that keep me off the street and out of jail, as I like to say. And I also spend a lot of time going to various GDGs around the world. Hello, people from GDG Orlando. Hi.
Yes.
And I
Orlando.
really have fun doing that.
Hendrix? Is Hendrix still down there?
I don't know. You have to ask them. I just came
Hendrix.
on the GDG channel. Yes.
Call me.
Yes. And so that's what I do. But that's not why we're here today. Well, except to answer questions and stuff. Let's talk about why we're here.
One other thing, though, I mean, since we're talking about all these great ways to get help, instead of trying to track them all down one at a time,
yes,
go there.
Okay. On the right side. There we go. All right. Yes. I mentioned that a moment ago.
The official Flutter site's community listing page.
Mm-hmm.
You can find the Slack, the Discord, the Google groups. I have seen Eric Seidel answering questions in the Google groups, and he is the lead engineer for the whole project. So
yes, definitely.
I mean, some people would argue that Hixie's actually running the ship, behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, pulling the levers. But I'm going to leave that between the two of them because they're the ones who started the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. We have somebody here.
Code of conduct, though?
Yeah, but you know what?
Okay.
Well, okay. First of all, let's bring on somebody who's usually asking questions or answering them in text. Raph.
Hey, Raph. Good to see you.
We've got Raph in front of the camera this time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, managed to get some time.
There we go. Hey, I appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Okay. Absolutely. So, hey, Rona, why aren't you here in front of the camera? Come on. You know where the link is. She's out there doing the admin thing, I see.
We're going to be talking about Google I/O coming up. That's what the session is about today. Google I/O and anything that you want to get answered
questions
about
on Flutter.
Dart. We're way open to all that.
Do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
Be nice. Be respectable. Be constructive. I realize, yes, this is YouTube chat and possibly YouTube comments. Make an exception. Be nice. Okay. And don't post anything rude, adult content, etc., offensive statements. Don't advertise, promote anything. Spamming, in our case, the one that we do seem to have problems with at times, if you ask a question, don't keep reposting it. It's a guaranteed way to get it ignored. We have a lot of things to talk about. We do see a number of questions. We also see questions from other places that we have in mind that we have been asked over the week, and we want to bring those up as well. Just because we don't talk about your question within a couple of minutes of you posting it doesn't mean we didn't see it. We see every single thing. Okay, I've got this chat window popped out right in my face. So don't talk about Fuchsia yet, Randall. See? Told you I'm watching.
No, somebody misspelled it. I had to spell it correctly.
Aha.
OCD, sorry.
Okay, and harassment. Oh, come on, that's Ganesh. He knows better. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Okay, now this says blocked from interacting on the chat. That's not quite true. One of the ways that we've been able to maintain a decent community with basic common courtesy is that all of the admins know each other. And if you've heard this one 1,000 times, my apologies, but it's something that's important that we make sure we put out there. We all know each other. Okay, the guys who run the Discord know the people who run the Slack, know the people who run the Medium, know the people, if you're an author on the Medium, they know the people from the Google groups, and Reddit used to be run by one of the people here, and we still have contacts there. If people start a bunch of bigotry or misogyny or hating Nazi stuff, you don't just get banned from the one place. Okay. We talk. And when somebody pulls something in one place, you can find yourself locked out of everywhere all in one day. And you're sitting there running, what happened? What happened? Well, what happened was you pulled a stunt in one place that violated the terms of service, and everybody knows each other. So nobody's going to put up with it. And that has really helped us keep things,
friendly.
You don't have to be super, super friendly and bend over backwards. Just give people at minimum the basic common courtesy you would give someone on the street.
Cool.
So, and that's
Also,
really it.
Much better if you're nice to each other.
Oh yes, it's
Yes,
better
yeah.
if you're nice, but if you don't feel like it, that's all right. We're not going to make you.
Now, if you talk about Flutter in the Dart channel on Discord, you will rightfully get a bit razzed.
Experience?
Yes.
Well,
not me personally, but I've been the razzer. That's how I know.
one of the interesting things that we see a lot of times, and this also brings us to 212 and null safety once more. You know, this is beginning to sound like we're kind of stuck in a loop sometimes, but it's important to make sure we get it out there. When you try to run your older code and you update, people are saying Flutter 2 broke my app. No, Flutter 2 didn't break your app. Flutter 2 at worst will mark some things as deprecated, but your code will still compile. What breaks your app, and your app got broke, don't get me wrong. What breaks your app is when your minimum Dart SDK gets changed to 2.12. Now you're being pushed into null safety by default. And what happened there is you're seeing all of this stuff that X type is not the same as X type with a question mark. That's not Flutter 2. That is null safety from Dart 2.12 and up, which reminds us Flutter 2.2 now comes with the Dart 2.13 release. And that is one of the many points we're looking at talking about right here.
Indeed. And I just pasted the thing that you might want to put in the video too. That's the never change 2.12. Don't ever change that thing. Follow all the instructions that are listed in the migration page.
Yes.
Please. Lot less heartache and headache and annoying us on some of the chat channels. Yeah, no. Or saying the things that Scott just said. Scott just said that like people say, oh, Flutter 2 broke my code. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
Yep. Hear that far too often now.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Unusual message here. Something I actually do need to pay attention to if it comes in. My apologies if I get a bit distracted.
So do we have an outline for what we're going to be talking about in terms of Google I.O., or are we just going to start winging it and try to come up with all the subjects?
Actually,
eventually?
you know what? We might, Chris, you couldn't be here today, but you can be here in spirit.
Yeah.
How's that? Yeah, we can kind of steal Chris's work here for a moment, because a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about are, okay, this is probably going to have to scroll.
Scroll, baby, scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be too much to put on a page.
And, oh, there we go. Now, the easier way to get this is to do this.
Yes.
Yeah, if you can just share this in a YouTube chat, that would be great.
I think he's working on that.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, that can get you videos and stuff too, which actually aren't bad. So
it's normally what you're looking for is a Medium article by Chris Sells.
Yep.
And that is our basic outline. But we can go into different points about it. Let's see here.
That's 2.13. You just mentioned that. And what's in 2.13? Shall we talk about that?
Sure. Go right ahead. I've been talking way too much already.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I usually interrupt so much that I get a little like sad that maybe I am cutting in too much, but I will just take that as a greater invitation. Good luck now. So one of the things that 2.13 added there was a few minor things, but the biggest thing that 2.13 added was wonderful type defs. So we've had type defs for, I would say, decades, but well, in Dart terms, yeah, it's been a long time. And that was the ability to take a function interface, like what parameters it takes, what value it returns, and so on, and name that with a single name. So that instead of having to always say, for example, my favorite is void callback because it's provided automatically by the framework. Void callback says, I take no arguments and I return void. And that's very common for a lot of things in the Flutter interfaces to have basically you handed a callback. For example, onPressed is going to be a void callback because there's nowhere for a value to go there, and it's not handing any value to the function. Okay, so we've had that for a long time, but people have been asking for at least the last few years for being able to do like they do with typedef in other languages. In other words, let's say a list of int. We have to keep saying list of int. Well, that's not too bad. But when you get to a map of some long name and the value is then a list of int. Now you've got this tremendously long type signature and you'd love to shorten it. Well, now you can in 2.13. So if you say Dart -- version and it says 2.13, you're golden. You can start using this. Be sure to put 2.13 in your pub spec, though, so other people know that you've already started using these advanced features. But what it does is it says you could say typedef foo equals that really long thing I just said. And now you can just say this value in this parameter is a foo, or this variable is a foo, and it's done. You don't have to spell out that long thing every time. It's really nice. And a nice subtle side effect. What if you want to change the name of one of your classes? Well, you don't want to just change the name. It'll break everybody's existing code. But you can now alias a class name to another class name, preserving the legacy value, but now renamed to fit your new grand scheme and scenario for taking over the world. So it's much nicer now. Had to throw that in case you're paying attention, right? So so typedefs are basically typedef, some identifier, equals, and something that you would put in front of a variable declaration, for example. So that everything that can go there, pretty much, I'm trying to think of an exception, can be on the right-hand side of a typedef. Now, this is not partitioning the type space. In other words, you can have foo equals int and bar equals int, defining two different new types. But they are completely equivalent. They're all just pure aliases. There's nothing that because this one is foo and that's bar, they don't talk to each other. It's just a notational convenience, a type alias. There's my bit. Scott?
Well, I'm sorry. I am also tracking a few other things here.
Ralph, you want to jump in while he's tracking things?
Yes,
Go right ahead.
I think the important one was in Flutter that the issue for iOS shaders compilation was addressed, and it should be fixed now. So yeah. I know that this issue was a problem for many people, and it should be fixed now. So that's great news.
Fixed for various meanings of fixed. I mean, some things are now better. Yeah, that's nice. Yay.
Yes, so that was a good one. From other news, there's like more text stuff. So like autos scrolling, and also the Dash has its own emoji, it seems, for some strange reason. But yeah, that's a nice touch. What else was there? The Flutter runs on universal apps for Windows UWP, so maybe you can push your app to Xbox and have your app on Xbox Store. Who knows?
Cool.
What else, Scott? Did you find something interesting?
Yes. Well, I have been looking at the talk about Fuchsia that is going on in the chat right now, and okay. If you use exit pop-ups on your web pages, please stop. Especially if they cover the whole screen. Let's just go there.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Fuchsia goes, I don't think we're going to be able to duck this one.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
haven't really gone too deeply into it.
We don't have to tell them anything we don't know. So
Well, yeah,
that'll keep it short.
We don't have to tell it. Remember, folks, Randall said we don't have to tell you anything that we don't know.
Yeah. We don't have to make things up on this show.
At least yet. But I got a device that runs on Fuchsia. So maybe in the future.
There you go.
Oh,
there you go. What are you running?
So I got a Pixelbook. Mm-hmm. So hopefully maybe in the future we can cover some stuff. We'll see.
Yeah. You know, I have been trying to do so many things at once. I got Fuchsia up and running on my Linux box, and I got it to the point where, you know, I got the black desktop with the words on it, and you can do a few things, but I never got to the point where I started writing apps for it. So that's definitely going to be next. But someone did mention, yes, that the kernel is Zircon. Zircon's a microkernel. It's meant to go in all kinds of little things, just like the Nest Hub, which they just publicly announced there for the launching of Fuchsia, the Google Nest that sits on your desk and keeps trying to say things when you didn't actually want to talk to Google. Sometimes it does that to me, like, yeah, okay, I'm surprised it didn't do it right now. But that actually is going to be running on Fuchsia now, and I believe already is.
I was going to say the trigger word just in as I was going to describe this, then I realized how many people at home that would end up triggering. So not going to do that. I'm not quite that
You're not going to trigger mine. You're not going to trigger mine. Yeah, if you want to mess with a whole lot of people, just say okay, right. And yeah.
This is better. Siri. No.
I promise, Ganesh, we won't. We won't. Fuchsia has a whole lot of modules and layers in the architecture. Short version, Zircon is the kernel. Garnet is the first layer. Then there's Peridot, and Peridot has two layers itself. One is called Ledger, which is cloud-based storage. And then there's Maxwell, which they're integrating some AI in there. Now, I'm hoping that what I'm checking here is not badly out of date. So if it is, blame Google. But also, then there's Topaz. Topaz is the one that stood out in my mind. It's the level of the OS where users interact, and I'm not sure that's still there because we've got the black screen right now still, right, Raf?
Actually, no. So if your GPU is not supported, then you can run it in software mode. So you can compile it, and then, well, you will have a black screen, but it's basically a window manager. So there's a simple browser and the terminal, and some command line utilities.
Yeah, so I don't think I had the browser, but that might be. I'm running an RTX card. So maybe it's not supported. But yes, go ahead.
I would say also that Fuchsia is an ongoing project. It's yes, it's already in the Google Nest, but it's really one of the things is it's not secret. Everything is being done in a public GitHub repo, and so you can watch the progress, watch the issues, maybe even contribute to it. But my understanding, and I may have this wrong, or they may have changed their mind since then, is that this is basically a small, more standalone operating system to eventually replace the Linux kernels that are on a lot of IoT devices. Like, you don't need Linux running on your refrigerator. You really don't. That's like way overkill. So this would be more of a appropriate operating system for these small devices, and with beautiful interfaces. Flutter's not the only choice, but Flutter is very significant to Fuchsia, as I understand it.
Flutter is basically the framework that the UI is going to be done in.
Okay.
All right, I was just, when you go to copy a URL, don't hit paste. It doesn't work very well.
It's backwards. Yes. Fuchsia Dev. Yes, there we go.
Yes, fuchsia.dev. We will put it up here also for people who don't have the chat.
But Fuchsia spelled right. It took me a really long time to not get S before the C or something else over there. It's Fuchsia, and that's cadence of letters is now pounded in my head every time I'm about to type it. Fuchsia. Fuchsia. That's I remember it auditorily.
Yeah.
Orally, I guess. I remember it auditorily. Yeah, it sounds close enough.
Now it's as Randall said, everything is done in the open. It's an open source project, and if you can read Rust, you can really just have yourself a time. Go dig through it. I believe it's Rust and C++, if I remember correctly, are the main languages. But one of the funny things is there's a component called Armadillo, and that was the UI. And it was a little bit confusing because at one point Armadillo disappeared. And everyone said, oh, is Flutter not going to be the system? Is it not going to be the framework for the UI? Are they changing it? And then somebody found Armadillo tucked way down into the source code. So that created even more confusion. So I was just chatting about this in general with someone at Google, and I was saying, there was a lot of confusion here and there on the forums and all, because this person has been working so hard, they really did not get a chance to look up and see what's on any forums. I mean, they go in, they work 9-10 hours a day, then they have to go home and do family things, so they never really get a chance. So I happened to tell them about this confusion and that people are thinking that maybe Flutter is not going to be the UI. And they looked at me really confused. And they said, if Flutter wasn't going to be the UI, I think somebody would have told me because that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. So, but like I said, it's all open source. It's right there. There are no secrets. It's just that a lot of people don't have or want to take the time to go dig through. However, Google is now launching Fuchsia officially on the Nest Hub, as I mentioned. This, if you haven't seen it, this is another article that kind of rocked Twitter for a little while. That one again is in the chat now. For this particular one, the URL is much too long.
Yep.
So what I will say is search Google for that headline, and that will get you to that article.
Which is the different way of having a Google shortener. You type keywords
there you go.
for your Google shortening.
There you go. How do you shorten a URL? Just type the title of the article in
Type
there.
the title, right? I will say, as I recall, there was nothing mentioned of Fuchsia at Google I/O.
No, not a word, which was a little surprising.
Yeah.
So maybe next year.
Google I/O. I bet I could share my screen, right?
Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of it there. So some of you were at Google I/O and you played around with the virtual world, and I wanted to show you. How do I share the screen? Is there some way to do that?
Now, are you getting ready to show them the fact that it's still open?
No, I'm going to show them where I am in the still open world. Here.
Alrighty then. Yes, if you did the activities in Google I/O, basically they mimicked the area with all the tents, and you could go around and go to the various demos, and there were links to code labs and all kinds of other things like that.
There.
And
Here I am. Here I am on the auditorium stage. There's no way up there from anywhere around here.
Oh, shush. A lot of people have figured that one out.
We figured it out. You hack the URL and you can get various places. But there's me still on stage, still waiting for my audience to arrive.
There you go.
Yep.
But yeah, this thing is still running. So what that means is you can go and check out all the code labs and all the videos and get all the information. And one really nice thing about it is it's not just Flutter. If you didn't have a chance to go check out the stuff in Android, you can still do it. If you want to go check out the things from TensorFlow, you can still do that. It's still up. And
there are rumors it will go away at the end of June or possibly 2 weeks in. We don't know. If we knew, we couldn't tell. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and we don't know, but I can tell you that I personally sent an email to somebody who knows the vice president who's responsible for this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when I grew up in Jersey, I know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah.
But so I know a guy who knows a guy.
Yeah.
And trying to relay an email saying, hey, this thing could be great for new people. And also like for Android developers who want to check out Flutter, all they have to do is walk over to the Flutter tent and they can see all the exhibits. Right. This is something really that they should just leave open all the time and maybe enable, that people can go around and chat.
No, you can't chat anymore. That's all closed.
I know.
down.
Well, they should turn that back on.
No, they don't. They would need moderators. What do you want them to do? Provide hundreds of volunteers like they had during the show? I don't think so.
No, you just use the AI to cut out the dirty words, and you know what?
Yeah.
People are people. You can't babysit everyone all the time, but it's better to just have some filters and put up a terms of service rather than everyone lose access to this incredible resource.
Yeah.
So,
in case you didn't notice, I had a dash in each hand. I have two of them, so I was carrying two dashes around.
There you go.
Anyway, yep. But check it out soon.
One of the funny things that actually did happen, and I'm not just saying this.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who spent time in the Flutter tent can tell you it was jam-packed all the time.
Oh yeah.
And we're in there, and I'm in there for like the first full day, and I'm like, wow, I/O is really busy. This is really cool. There are people all over the place, I'm thinking. And on the second day, people keep coming into Flutter, and they're saying, oh, wow, everyone's here. Oh, wow, everybody's here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, everybody's here. And it reached a point where I typed in chat, I said, congratulations, you're the lucky 500th person to say that. What prize do we have for our winner? So finally, I decided to go check out all the other tents and see, what was going on. They were empty by comparison. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
None of them had even a third as many people that were in the Flutter tent. And I was really shocked because I thought almost all the tents were the same. Right. So yeah, the popularity of Flutter is really, it really caught me by surprise. Now the Android tent looked a lot emptier, but the Android tent was also a lot bigger. So I don't know. That might not be a fair comparison.
Well,
but let's just say, where is that?
So I can say from my sources that
Yes.
Flutter 10 was so popular that Googlers were so busy responding the questions that they got banned by the system.
Yes, so did I actually. Yes, we were so busy helping people that we got muted by the system for spamming. And the only way I found around it, even after 10 minutes, was I had to log out and log back in.
Wow. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah, really.
Yes.
Oh, this is really cool. Nilay pinned the tweet.
Oh,
so
nice.
This is really cool.
She does that a lot. Yes.
Yes, she did. Let's see. Share screen. Share a window. You all don't want to see my monitor. Believe me, it makes everything look tiny. So there we go. That there is just one of the pictures.
Yes.
From it. And actually, this is an outside area where we all got together. And apparently...
It was in there somewhere. Let's see. I'm trying to find it.
Uh-oh. I just happened to notice something.
Huh?
Remy is up here.
Yep. Oh.
Remy maneuvered his way onto the top of the logo.
Oh, nice.
And it apparently cut him off in the picture.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Remy. That would have looked really cool.
Yep.
But yeah. So it was absolutely packed. And
Yes.
yeah.
I thought at first I'd hate it because I normally hate things where you have to work around to find things. And I'm still, my OCD completely attacked my actual practicalness and said, you're not going to find everything. You're not going to find everything. Stop it. Right. So I had to like have that argument 2 or 3 times with myself. So the most important thing to find was the dash. And I realized I'd had it all along. Well, that sounds like Dorothy and Toto. Not Toto. What Dorothy and something, whatever she had all along. But it turns out I had it, but I just hadn't looked at my inventory because it didn't automatically place it on my hand. So once I did, I went, oh yeah, I've got Dash. Awesome. Wish I had done that before. But yeah, no, it was actually an interesting way, and it also allowed for localized chats. So people could kind of huddle near each other and have conversations, and people could go into where people sat down and have really private conversations, more or less private.
To get into a private room, you just sat at a table with the people, and there were actually lines for seats.
Yeah,
especially when Neeli was sitting down.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yes. So, anything else we can cover? Anything else?
Actually, I'm looking at the announcements for web. And there are a whole lot of them. Some improvements when dealing with the canvases. And one of the things that really made me sit up and take notice, the latest version of Flutter Dev Tools will now support the Layout Explorer when you're working with Flutter Web.
Wow.
So
I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that. Oh, now I've got to go try it right after this show. Man, how come I didn't notice that?
There are a whole lot of interesting things, and there we go. Okay. Now it works much better if I put it on the screen.
Yes. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, you were talking about that. There we go. Yeah.
Yes. So this right here is a picture of the Layout Explorer working with your Flutter web apps.
Right. Cool.
So that right there is going to be rather interesting. I'm trying to remember where the details are in this, but there was some talk about improvements in performance with the Canvas kit. Both HTML and Canvas kit, there is now support for shader masks and compute line metrics. So that will help with the parity, I guess. It will help make sure that the web has access to a lot of things that the mobile SDK already does.
Cool.
Because there are certain limitations on web that that we don't have on mobile, and they are trying to work their way around a lot of those.
It's one of the things I've heard, and this may explain a few things that y'all have noticed about the web stuff, is that essentially they're downloading an implementation of Skia in WebAssembly for at least one of the modes of throwing stuff up on the screen. So if only there were user accessible parts in the Skia that's already in Chrome, they wouldn't need to do this. But there are some interfaces that don't work that way. And what would you do on Safari? It still has to work. So that would mean having to download that or maybe have a parallel way to do that. But yeah, so that's why that's that big package that first comes down in the Dart.js file even for web. It's because, well, only for web, I should say, because it has to download that entire mechanism of Skia converted to WebAssembly. Yeah, crazy stuff. Little facts to know.
I happen to see and I happen to feel your pain, Kennedy.
Oh.
So let me pull this up here. I feel your pain. When I run a Flutter Web app, scrolling in Firefox is janky, works well in Chrome, even in the release model. Hot tip. Okay. As I said, have felt this pain. And here is your pain reliever. Okay, smooth scrolling with Flutter Web. This is, you might want to take a look at that if you can read this here. DEZSO15. I believe that is a letter O, not a 0. But I worked with this and it worked beautifully. It's a little complex and it has a whole lot of different settings that you can play with. It allows you to make all kinds of adjustments to the way the scrolling is until you can mimic a web page beautifully. So take a look at this, see what it can do for you. Again, that is smooth scrolling with Flutter Web. Just leaving this up here for a little bit longer and also trying to find out, why I didn't already turn that off.
Yeah, I was going, what's this have to do with Fuchsia?
So normally what happens is Simon and I are both here, and when one is running our mouth, the other one's running this in the background. So
yeah. I don't know enough yet to fully channel Simon on this strategy yet. So eventually, maybe someday.
But yes, so there is that. The smooth scrolling does have a fix, and I have used it. It does work.
Cool.
So from other stuff on Google I/O, I think it's worth mentioning that this time there was a lot of Flutter sessions, like on YouTube.
Yeah.
And they were very good, like advanced talks. There was the one on FFI, which was very good, with the presentation of the tool and how to do like the bindings with the C libraries. Let me look at what I have in the docs. There was also the other one, which was about like building your desktop design language. It was also very good, and it showed how to like build a pixel perfect app. Like if you have like some very old design, or you want to build something very custom, then you can do this like pixel perfect stuff. Like the stuff like 10 years ago, a lot of tables and stuff. So that was also very good. And the other one I liked was from Kevin, which was presenting. The presentation was about building platform adaptive apps with a good example how to do. I think that was like the collage or something like that. So that was one app which was running on mobile and also on desktop. That was also a very good example. It's the source code is available, so if you don't know how to do like the mobile and desktop app, so you can go and check. It's very good.
And speaking of responsive, we have a question in the chat room about what's the difference.
Actually,
were you going to pull it up?
I was going to put that one up, I believe.
We think with one mind. So the two of us, we each have half a brain. Okay, great.
This is actually a good question.
Yeah, I like it. So what's the difference between the width double affinity and width media query? Well, media query is going to give you the absolute position of the walls of your device. And
the physical screen.
Yeah, you have side stuff. Not too often, but you do sometimes have this is actually inside something with a border and things like that. And that in that case, width double infinity is going to say expand out to whatever's left. In other words, if you have some side trim or something, it's only going to go out to there. And this is more visible on top and bottom. If you say height double infinity, it's going to go to the very top and bottom of what's left after you take out the app bar and the bottom app bar and things like that. Scott, you're trying
kind of my understanding on that is kind of basically double infinity. The easiest and fastest way to understand it for an Android dev is match parent. Double infinity, match parent, same thing. Double infinity basically means take every pixel that you can get.
Yep.
Now, if it's inside of a box, it's not going to be able to get anything outside of that box. Okay. If the parent is full screen size, then it'll take the full width, the full height, whatever you tell it.
Right. Now, if you want to
media
base
query
stuff on that number, rather than using media query, which is going to give you some absolute physical dimensions, you want to be using things like Layout Builder. Layout Builder looks for that same tallest it can be, widest it can be based on its parentage, but gives you that as a number, as a size technically. And you can use that size to say have 4 quarters that are, a fourth of each, the fourth of the screen, because you can make each box a quarter in each direction. Stuff like that. You can do all sorts of layout decisions. Do I put 2 columns here, or do I make it one tall, skinny column because I don't have the width to have 2 columns? You can make those kind of decisions. Layout Builder, I think, should be in everybody's responsive toolkit.
Yes.
It should be like one of the first things you reach for, because you can also make breakpoints based on that. You can just, you can use fractionally sized box, but then you still got to position it and all that stuff. But just knowing the actual size number is very, very helpful.
Now, and one other thing too is that, and I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit on there, Ralph, because when I tried it, I couldn't do a number of things I wanted to, but maybe it'll get better over time. That's a whole nother thing. That's about the Flutter flow. It's a great start, but I'm going to stick to manual personally for now. But yeah, it is a fantastic start. I'm really impressed with it as an early product. It'll be nice to see what it can do in the future. But one of the things with Flutter is you customize, and you really can't do that very well with a lot of those other editors like that. And it's very, very difficult to do things like what we're talking about. Using the Layout Builder is the only way to figure out what size your parent is. And I'll explain that in a minute for those who don't know. But I don't know how you would use a tool like that, like Flutterflow, in order to create the calculations based on a Layout Builder and making your responsive design decisions. I'm not saying it can't do it. I'm saying I don't know how you would be able to do it in that. Now, when I say that it's the only way to know what size your parent is, that has to do with the layout passes. And one other thing too, media query is a ridiculously large amount of information. It tells you everything about your device. It tells you what accessibility settings your user has, brightness of the screen, I believe, the exact dimensions of the glass, not of your app, and not of the available window size. And that's the thing with media query size, height, and width. And another thing too that Simon pointed out is if you try to use media query inside of your build method, it becomes insanely expensive for every frame. Every single time it changes, it's looking up all of this information. So if you're going to use media query, do it one time and set a final variable based on that. Okay. Or even just set a variable, period.
And then the problem is it's not responsive if you're on the web, which changes size. And that can be a problem. That's why, again, Layout Builder specifically has optimization. So if the parent size didn't change and nothing down below changed its layout structure, it can just go, boop, here's your size. And it doesn't change, doesn't cause rebuilding if everything that's supposed to be the same stays the same. Whereas media query, it goes, well, I got to get the number now. I got to get the number now. I got to get the number now. and it has no opportunity to tell you what you need to know, especially with the web and desktop. You've got to allow for the fact somebody's going to grab that bottom right corner and make it bigger or smaller.
Yep. Now, what we were talking about too, with the fact that you can't know what your parent size is, for those of you who are new, that you'll hear us saying, it is that in Flutter's layout, constraints go down and sizes go up. What? You mean the constraints shrink and the sizes get bigger? No, that's not what that means. Picture a tree of stuff. Okay, here is your parent, and then there's a child, and then there's another child, and et cetera, et cetera. The parent passes the maximum and minimum possible sizes, which are the constraints, to the child and says, what size do you want to be? And the child says, I don't know, let me get back to you. And then it figures out what it needs and then passes the leftover size availability to its child. So if the parent says you can be 100 by 100, child says, hang on, I'll let you know. Child wants to be 25 by 25. Okay. Well, then it goes to its child and it says, well, you can be 25 by 100. And then it goes down again and again and again. And then the bottom item says, well, I need to be X size. Then its parent says, well, combined with me, now we need to be Y size. And then that gets passed up. The neat trick about this is that the size of the parent is not determined until the size of the child is passed up, which means whatever you're in, you have no idea what your parent size is. You don't even know where you were put in that parent, where you were aligned. This is the kind of thing that Layout Builder is about. Layout Builder is not cheap. Okay, there is quite a bit of expense to this. But when you need to know the size of your parent and you need to make decisions about it, it's indispensable. And if only we had somebody who knew about this stuff in a little bit more technical fashion and could even maybe help me run the back end of this stream a little bit so I don't keep making the mistakes that I'm making. Where could we ever find such a person?
Oh, oh, there he is.
I need coffee. I need all the coffee in the world right now.
The long lost
his
soul.
Favorite coffee mug that I love. It's very British. No, let's see that. Let's see. Yes. Keep calm and press delete.
Yeah, you can always delete it, right?
The prodigal child.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Paul, put it this way: soon everyone will know what I've been up to because there's going to be an app release.
Ah,
very cool.
I'll tweet about it.
Wait, you're releasing an app? Yeah. I know you've been working on like 50 of them, but you're actually going to release one?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, anyway, how's everyone? It's been a while.
Doing well.
Yep.
So, Layout Builder. What were we talking about? I heard that sort of bit of that conversation there. What's been going
on? It originally started with someone asking the difference between Double Affinity and Media Query. And I know you just love using both of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all a question of solving your layout problems, right? Like in sense of Media Query is probably the worst one. It's always the easiest to offend with, right? It's the easiest offender that you can do is to use Media Query when you least expect it, because a lot of people with Media Query, and do you know what? When I first started doing Flutter, I was doing this as well, putting Media Query at the top of a build method in your top layer of your UI. And what you've just done is whenever the screen size changes, and this is very important on desktop and other web and other platforms, not just mobile, as soon as your size of your screen changes, that's it. Everything gets rebuilt. But it doesn't need to be rebuilt, because as long as it doesn't depend on layout chain, it will lay out anyway. You don't need to rebuild, right? And that's the key. So a lot of the time, people want to size something to the fraction of their parent. Well, that's fractionally sized box, right?
True. That's the easier way to do it.
You do not need to look at like Media Query width times 0.5 to get 50%. No, because not just that, it's 50% of the screen, not 50% of your widget. So I've seen crazy things where people.
But that's not going to help you when you need to make a decision based on size. For that, you're going to need a layout builder.
So there's a very important distinction. If you're making a choice of what widgets to show, based on size, that's when the layout builder comes in. But if you just want to get the size to lay out your widgets, that's the wrong way. That's when you need to do layout. So that's a custom multi-child layout or a single child layout, and or custom render objects and other mechanisms, because it does build. And once the widgets are built, then you do layout. These are the passes that the engine goes through. So it's build, then it does layout, and then it does render. So it's a very important distinction that layout will happen. It can happen 60 times a second. It will happen as much as it needs to do, same as draw. But build does not.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are waiting for more I/O news, we are getting through it. But again, this is Humpday Q&A. So as we see questions, we're also trying to handle them as much as we can. So let me see here also real quick.
Can I bring up
few other
the
things?
minor thing in the paragraph? A paragraph here.
Well,
Just this is minor, but it makes a difference for all of us who are building for mobile. It says in this release, we've implemented incremental iOS installs, and I have actually experienced this. In other words, the amount of work it takes as you're debugging to go from one version to the next, you know, that hot reload time when you hit save and all of a sudden your code updates, that's faster now. 40% decrease in the amount of time it says. Yay.
What was this in?
This is
incremental. Incremental
Is it released
install.
notes? Has something been released? Am I missing something? I haven't. I have no idea about anything to Google I/O. I've been out of the picture completely.
Yeah, well, you can watch this show from the beginning.
Yeah, I'll do that.
We've talked about a lot of good things. Did you hear about?
They're talking about iOS incremental installs.
Yeah,
is what they're talking about.
But was this a thing at WDC, or is this is this something to Flutter specific?
This is something that they announced at I/O. Actually, what's going on here also, they've reduced the amount of time to render frames of an iOS animation by 75%. And also, the Flutter team has implemented incremental iOS installs. So
this is more. I think this is more about when you have a release build and you go to release another release build. Just like app bundles, it only installs the bits it needs. And the bits that are updated.
This is development. During the development process.
During development, yes. Hang on a second. I'm putting the link in the chat right now. It's a specific poll. Poll 77756. So jackpot 56.
Oops.
Yep. There we go.
Ah, yes.
One other thing, really, I just want to point out, and maybe it's just me who is a little tickled by this, but Zoe Fan said something that really just about made me drop my drink in one of her parts, and she said the word Xbox. We can put Flutter on Xbox, and that is because they have support for Windows UWP.
It's what allowing Mike. Was it Mike Reinstrom? Is it Mike Reinstrom has been working on? I'll get my names mixed up. Was that? Oh no, Clark Zone. It's Clark Zone.
Oh, it was Clark Zone. Okay.
Clark Zone. He actually came up with the initial UWP prototype stuff and made it work. And then he's been really working hard in integrating it into the engine properly and getting all the testing going and doing all that. I've been following it quite closely. Yeah. Really good work. And because UWP,
now you're only going to find this in the dev channel right now. It's not everywhere. So you do need to use dev. But I was joking around in an article. I said, what's next? Toyotas? But wait, that was announced at Engage. So yes, Toyotas too. But really, with all the platforms, with Fuchsia, with Linux, with Mac desktop, with Windows desktop, with iOS, with Android, it's showing up on Next hubs. They're talking about possibly refrigerators once Fuchsia completely launches. Now Xbox. You know what? All we need at this point is PlayStation and Apple Watch, and we will rule the world. Okay.
And replace Wear OS with Fuchsia, but I didn't say that.
I'm sure someone's already about doing it.
Wear OS just had a really good day. Don't ruin it. Let them enjoy some good times for a while.
And also,
those folks working hard.
and also have support for Samsung's what's the name? Tizen.
Tizen, yeah.
Tizen.
Actually, well, no, it's replacing Tizen. Trust me, this is a Tizen. I am very unhappy. Okay. I thought I was going to be able to use this one for Flutter development. No, I cannot. So,
you can now.
Not much I can do with. Now the Tizen.
You can.
This one's too old. I checked, Raf.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Oh, yeah. So, and of course, during COVID, you can't return a watch. So, right now, I have a heart rate monitor that really doesn't do much else for me. So
Fitbit.
let's see here. There was one other question that I was going to bring up. Okay. No, Raf already pointed that out. Simon, when an Android device is in split screen mode,
Do you want to bring up the
what
question?
do you think Media Query is going to do? Well, this is responding to. There we go. This is talking about Media Query. What's it going to do? And Simon has a little bit of experience with Android. Just
all the time ever. Yeah. So the split screen, as soon as you put it into split screen, it'll cause the media query to rebuild, right? And if you drag the split screen separator, it'll rebuild each as the drag happens. If you've got the enhanced activity mode enabled, I can't remember what the flag is. Otherwise, it waits for you to stop and then it rebuilds both activities. But yeah, it wouldn't perform great if you're doing that. The difference here is you can do some interesting things, and there are ways to get more. It depends on what you're doing, to be honest. You can do a thing where you actually include the widgets for two hierarchies and then reorganize them. There's some very clever things you can do with render objects to get performance back. But yeah, for the most part, I would recommend, for example, let's say you did split screen and you had two widgets side by side, and then you go into so it's normal full screen, and then you go into split screen, so you've got half the room. Then what happens is you want the widgets to snap one below each other like this. Well, that's a simple wrap widget, and it's all done for you, right? You don't have to do layout builder, calculate half the sides, move them, put them into a row or into a column. No. That's you manually doing what other widgets already do, and they do it better, right? Mm-hmm. So it's about really about exploring the widgets that are available and seeing what they do, because each widget is about providing that layout and render to you, a unique way of doing it to you per widget, basically. So if you've thought about a problem, they've already thought about it and fixed it as a widget, and you can reuse it. So yeah, that's called wrap, W-R-A-P.
I think the question was, what would be the size? Would it be half or like the full screen?
Oh, it'd be half.
Yeah.
So because
the thing is that the widget, the activity, which is the entirety of the Flutter view, is put into half the screen. Therefore, it only knows of half. Media query is kind of interesting. Media query is not. Android does the same. Android and iOS do the same thing. What you're asking for is the size of layout, is the top level of your layout, not the size of the display. To get the size of the display, you query the display and ask for the size of resolution of the display. But for the most part, you don't care about the resolution of the display. You should never really care about the resolution of the display.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just to remind people, there is one of the oldest sayings in Flutter that we haven't used a whole lot recently, but maybe we should. If you guys remember, we always used to have a problem, and how do I do this? How do I do that? And someone would turn around and look at you and say, "There's a widget for that."
Yeah.
So There you go. There's a widget for that.
Yes. Oh, and this is important. Apparently, they added the Flutter Dash to the icons. So now you can put a Flutter Dash in your apps.
It's a Dart Dash.
Yep.
Dart Dash, sorry, not a Flutter.
The goddess of Dart the goddess of Dash will come and strike you down.
I apologize.
Shams, he didn't mean it.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Remember, Shams is the creator of Dash and the universe.
Since I don't yet have my Dash, I don't know how restricted I actually am. As soon as I actually get a Dash, like the 7 that are behind you, Simon, I will eventually be part of the crew. Not yet. I have not accomplished that yet. Yeah.
Not to change the subject, but to change the subject.
Might as well. That was dead. Done.
There was another announcement at I.O. that I just thought was huge. And certain YouTubers keep saying, oh, Flutter is not going to be taken seriously by big companies and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. Keep talking, pal. But there was one that was among all the other big companies. There was one that really, really stood out. And this one, their one app, just one app of theirs, has 6 million Play Store reviews.
Wow.
1.2 billion with a B monthly active users. They're in 230 countries and regions, 45 billion messages per day. And they're owned by a company called Tencent, who has already ported 20 apps to Flutter. And that has given them the confidence in Flutter that WeChat is coming to Flutter. Okay. WeChat. So don't tell me Flutter is not ready for prime time or it's not ready for big business. Tencent is not going to trust this thing to a second-rate system. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just huge.
I would have thought that 50 Cent would have owned 10 Cent, but okay. Oh, I've offended about a third of our audience at this point, but yes, all right.
And now I need a drink.
There you go.
Hey, I got the dad jokes now. That's I'm old enough to be able to easily say those.
And one thing too, especially for our American audience, one thing that we have to remember is that Flutter really took off in other areas of the country, and I'm sorry, the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to be honest, okay? American developers have been like stubborn mules with their heels dug in, and we're trying to drag them towards Flutter, but they don't want to let go of their old stuff. Well, one sec, Simon, just let me finish the thought.
Go for it.
And what happened was the rest of the world left us behind. And we're just starting to catch up. To give you an idea, Alibaba is in China, okay? Their app has 1.2 million reviews, not users. Yeah, but last I heard, I believe there are over 50 million users, and that their catalog has been in Flutter for years. Grab is a super app in Southeast Asia, 200 million downloads. They're Flutter. 4.5 stars on the Play Store, 4.3 stars on the Apple Store. Okay. Nubank, the largest bank outside of Southeast Asia, is 35 million customers. And then since they've gone to Flutter, their PRs are taking 85% less time to merge. Okay. Kotak, one of India's largest financial institutions, is building their trading app with Flutter. Okay. And as I said, WeChat is coming to Flutter. So, Americans we're behind the curve. If you're just starting to think that maybe Flutter is ready for prime time, you got to look outside of our borders because it's
I tell you what,
in prime time.
I think the thing that I think people have is that they've been burned too many times. So in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of technical churn. People bring an idea over here, and then it fizzles out because funding, whatever, all sorts of other reasons, right? And all these ideas come and go, and they're always hearing about the next greatest thing. And Flutter's just one of many, right? Whereas I think that's the feeling that I get, and it's not until it's distinct itself from the crowd now that people are like, oh, hang on a minute, maybe this is a thing, right? And now they're coming on board. Whereas I think it's been evaluated early by a lot of other people, and those people that evaluate early realize its potential and how it differs from the competition, and how it, in my opinion, is better than the competition. Have then gone ahead and used it in their businesses and all projects and moved forward with it. And I think exact style of thing.
They only use now for a headline that says which is better, Flutter or React Native, is to just be a clickbait. That's the only point of those articles now. None of them have any content that anywhere nearly justifies React Native. So it's pretty amazing when you
and the main difference is React Native is called native because it's borrowing the operating system components.
Yep.
Right. And there's interpreted code there, and Flutter's using ahead of time compiled code and does not, it draws a
JavaScript engine built in. Yeah, let's ship our app with a JavaScript engine and do everything in JavaScript.
Yeah, because JavaScript's a universal language, isn't it? I mean, it has prototypes. That's even better than Dart. Woo.
Anyway,
did I just say that out loud? Yes, I did just say that out loud.
Going back to the fact that Flutter is not going to fizzle, there's a couple of now before a recent court decision. One of the biggest things that Flutter had going for it was that it used Dart and not Java, and this has nothing to do with technology or anything being better. This has to do with lawyers. There was a huge lawsuit, if you didn't know, between Oracle and Google. It was for a $9 billion tennis ball that kept getting bounced back and forth depending on who won the last appeal. Well,
so far, Google's come out top, right?
Yeah, we won. Yes. Well, open source in general won.
The other thing too is
sorry.
Sorry, let me finish this idea, and then I want to get into the open source. There's so many directions this can go. It can go so many directions, but also the Linux kernel in Android. Google has been asking Linus Torvalds for certain changes, and Linus has basically been saying, "Go away." So, in a perfect world, Google would have an open source language that they have a hand in, Dart, running a UI kit that they have a hand in, Flutter, running on an operating system that they can put just about anywhere that they also have a hand in, that is also open source, Fuchsia. Okay, it's almost like someone planned this so that Google can break everything away from Linux and Java. So that's Flutter is just one part of a larger puzzle, I think. And that was the original reason. But now that the U.S. Supreme Court has made that ruling in Google's favor, it's no longer a $9 billion problem. But now Flutter already has enough steam behind it in open source that even if Google dropped it tomorrow, Flutter is not going to lose momentum anymore.
And I giggled at the fact that it's also about open source.
Jay, get yourself on the stream. Come on. This is your own. This is the same guy.
You want to comment?
Who did the coding tutorial for 30 Days of Flutter.
And what about the 7 ways of saying false and the 5 ways of saying true? I think.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Well, wait. Let's bounce back to something much better. Like Randall, you mentioned that the court decision was a victory for open source. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
but other people
describe that. I was getting into that as Jay interrupted.
Yes, please. I wanted to finish the one thing first. Sorry about that.
So I'm huge on open source in general. I did Floss Weekly, a weekly video podcast about open source, interviewing some of the key leaders, including Linus and a bunch of other really cool people, Monty of MySQL fame, that sort of thing. Anyway, one of the things that's important about open source is that you're able to mimic a existing commercial piece of software well enough that someone could drop your thing in. But in order for that to be possible, you have to exactly duplicate the API to do that. Because, like, for example, if you're trying to replace Excel, for example, you have to mimic the file format and everything. What Oracle was arguing was that they published and should be protected by copyright the API. And the courts luckily sided against that, saying APIs are not copyrightable in that form.
They don't actually hold any substance.
Yeah, there's nothing to it. Right.
There's just a description. Basically, you can't copyright the interface because, it's Otherwise,
it's a-
nobody's going to use
It
your
was
stuff.
arguable. That was the problem. It was
I
still
think here's the
arguable.
problem. It's a bit
Yeah.
like this. It's a bit like this. It's very problematic in terms of, let's say I make the best souffle and I give you instructions on making a souffle. Those instructions is what the API is. It's kind of like the definition of what it is, but it's not the product of the result
Right.
doing the work, right? And that's the difference, right? And it's a very close tied thing because I mean,
Well, your
And for
analogy
anyone who
breaks
writes
down-
stories,
yeah,
I just say your
Well-
analogy breaks down in that you could publish a cookbook.
Yeah.
That could be
exactly.
copyrighted.
I know that. I wasn't trying to.
No, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Another way to put
Somebody
it
at
though
home
is if you
saying
write
this.
fiction stories, there's something called the hero's journey, which is just the structure. This nobody doesn't know anything. They find out that they are descended from some king or whatever. You know, they go and they fight the whatever, and then they live happily ever after. And that's the hero's journey structure. You can't copyright the path, but you can write a story that goes through all those stages, and your story is copyrightable. Oracle was basically trying to copyright the idea.
Do you know what's really scary about this is if that had gone through, what implications that would have to the entire industry. I don't think they realize that what API means is interface between two systems, right? It really is. And it's like, what's the word? Yeah, I mean, example, HTTP, yeah, right? But it's simple as like me just describing a function to you, right? I need a function that returns that takes two instance parameters and adds them together. Now the actual bit inside the function, that's the meat, right? That's the thing that is copyrightable. But the definition of the function, which is add, should not be copyrightable, right? The description of it, saying a function that adds two integers together and turns one.
Yeah.
So
We got more points from IO.
let's get back to Flutter.
Well,
Yeah.
Flutter, and that's a good one. Okay, let's just pick something here from IO about Flutter. Let's see here. Whoa. How about Android deferred components? There's something I didn't quite understand very well. This release uses Dart's split ahead of time compilation feature to allow Flutter apps to download modules containing ahead of time compiled code and assets at runtime. So this is a deferred component, much like deferred imports, but it's apparently on Android.
Yeah, when you do your Android project, you build it in modules, and what they're saying is you can defer the loading of a module. It's how instant apps work. The idea being that imagine you can split your compile code up into multiple blocks and only ship the blocks that you need. And thereby, it's a bit like this whole thing about downloading everything up front, or just downloading what you need to make it work.
Yep.
Very cool.
So it would still be ultimately one build of some mix of things ending up permanently installed on a person's phone. You're not going to be adding more modules over time to the install, right? Or did I miss the point?
I was just distracted. Say again. Sorry.
Same.
So it's a I know it was interesting. So it's the I think I was catching it, and I was distracted before as you were talking, so I don't know if I heard this right, but it's basically a way of making sure that the app that's downloaded for your phone is specifically somewhat tailored to your phone, and there are modules that can be pulled in or not pulled in. It's not to give it different user functionality, it's to give it different makeup based on what your particular phone is capable of, like maybe doing backfill stuff and things like that, right?
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
I see what George
Close
just
enough.
said, referring to dynamic libraries on Android and not instance apps. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's why I'm just saying that the way instant apps are built out modules the same way as
Yeah. Okay. All right.
dynamic
Cool.
library ones. But yeah,
Cool. What else about Flutter? More things about Flutter. I'm sure something about selectable text, was it? Or things that have changed
There you go.
about that?
I'm also looking at the DevTools updates again. And folks, you gotta realize that Chris Sells' article is like a 20 some odd minute read.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way we can sit here 22-minute read on Medium.
We don't have that much time left. So
yeah, which that means if you
out.
skim it, it's 22 minutes. If you want to try to memorize it, forget it.
Right.
There's just so much. But yeah, and there are improvements to DevTools. There is a provider tab to Flutter DevTools, which guess who had a hand in? Remy.
Remy. Well, he already had a RiverPod plugin, so I imagine he finally said, well, I'll go back and support the old guys too.
Okay, so VGV is in the house.
Oh, awesome.
Gee, I wonder who had a hand in building that. So, which VGV person is this? I'm wondering. Do you think it could be David or Felix or Jorge? Come on, guys, take a guess.
Cool.
Has anyone tried the type aliasing yet?
We were talking about that earlier. I haven't tried it. Is it Ref?
No, I just said what you said. So we talked about it already.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't tried it in earnest yet, except to play with it for small examples, and it's it does sort of shorten things up, and particularly in the case, I think when I saw Remy, in fact, talk about it, he was talking about how some sort of state notifier provider that has two complex types in it. Maybe it was Riso that did that. One of those video guys made a video that had that talked about how this really long, complex type of two types became this very short thing now, and that was really nice. So that you don't have to keep parsing each one of those in your head and go, is that the same thing as the thing that was the variable up here? Yes, it is the same.
So, you know, they open sourced the photo booth. Well, I just took a look. I just took a look at who the commits were, and it's Felix and Massier and a few others from VGV. So yes,
nice
is the answer.
So
308 commits. Someone's been busy.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, Simon. I'm going to throw this one out there now. The first thing I want to say before throwing this out there is we could do an entire show on this. All right, we could do a whole show, and it evolves. It does evolve, because the question is, would we still be looking at ancestor state of type, or do you think we will be looking more at provider with the select function now, since it's a little simpler?
What in what? Sorry, context.
The question.
Read the screen, Simon. Read the screen.
Yeah.
From your experience,
the question. The
apps.
first thing you know as a presenter, the first thing you read the question.
Yeah,
I read it. That's why I
read it.
put it up here. What are you talking about?
he read it to himself. Yes.
Building older apps. What?
At least move your
these
lips.
apps. Say something about folder structure and state management without using any package. Yeah. Got your code well.
Okay, yeah, doesn't count. All right, that's four letters.
So it's really a case of what your development process is. I mean, you construct. I mean, I don't have any real preference really. I think there's a real power in doing like feature-driven development, right? So you work on a feature at a time, and therefore you probably have a folder called features with the name of the feature, and inside that you might have pages or screens or model, and therefore anything to do with that section of your app is self-contained, which can help in terms of testing, and then you can pull that out and modularize and package it and all sorts of fun things. State management, simple inherited widget. Well, not simple, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, I always end up using provider just because it is just a layer on top of inherited widget.
Yep.
It's quite direct.
Yeah, it's a very simple and straightforward thing. But before doing that, you were doing something that's And again, I would do the same. I would do provider, and I like the select function. I used to use value notifier, but provider with the select function gives you the same functionality with a lot less hassle. But if you really want to be hardcore, could use create a stateful app state and use find ancestor state of type.
Yep. The thing is, so the nice thing about the ancestor state of type is it goes up the tree. Now you might only have so going down the tree is problematic. Going up the tree is not. So if you go up the tree from so imagine you are this widget that you're looking at, whatever it is, and you go, my parent is, so I'm a text, my parent is a center, my parent above that is a container, my parent above that is a column. You see, you're going up the tree. There's only a finite list, and it's normally quite short. Whereas going down the tree, you have to go through every sibling child of every node of the tree, which is much more difficult and much more, and is very much slower, right? So as long as you're not doing something like, let's say on a button press, you want to action something from a global state, well, then you can do that ancestor state of type, where it walks up the tree to find the object that you want to make the change on and make the change. Because it's a one-off thing. But if you're doing it on 60 frames a second, maybe that's a bad idea, right? So yeah, it's about picking and choosing your battles. But yeah, don't early optimize for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the death of everything, right? It's also things like this. I know this for a fact, as an intermediate sort of programmer, as a mid-level programmer, so you come out of beginner, you do this thing where you're like, I know that I might want to add this, make this optional, this parameter, so I'll make it optional. I know I might do this. And you end up parameterizing everything. And as soon as you do that, you're going down the same path of early optimization. You need to be happy with refactoring and learning to refactor and move large sections of code and move it around without worrying about breaking it.
Wait. So you mean I shouldn't be putting 27 name parameters on my custom widget?
My theory that I've used and shared with other people over my lengthy career now at this point is you can't write an abstraction until you've done it concretely 3 times. And the reason I say 3 is because you might, if you do it just 2 times, you might think all of these are ganged together with all of those along a linear line. But no, usually there's that third dimension when you add a third concrete implementation.
So it's always like having 2 implementations. You go, I need. You have one implementation. You go, I only need this one thing changed. So I add a Boolean parameter.
Yeah.
So that it toggles it, right? And then now I need 3, so I make an enum with 3 things, and then I pass type into the object, and I have 3 variations. And then you go, no, I need this whole set of different parameters to this thing to do what I need it to do. Now I'm like, well, now I build a subclass and make it a strategy pattern, and it just goes on and on.
Right. But
right? But the problem here is when you think about it up front and go, oh, you know what? I might need this in this way in the future, so I build it out as a strategy pattern now to save me that refactoring time. That's the death of. That's always the bad way approach. That's always the bad approach.
I've learned to be a lazy programmer over my career. Do as few steps as possible to get to the very next hurdle, and then stop again.
Again, I think it's that kind of thing of refactoring. I think for a lot of people, a lot of developers have this problem where they look at this code and go, "How the hell did they come up with this code in the first place?" Right? They look at it as like a final product. And it steps along a journey, right? Mm-hmm. It was crap to begin with. I guarantee it was terrible. And then they refined it and refined it and refined it to come up with this thing that you see now, or the pattern or the complex behavior, whatever it's doing, right? And that's the key is it's a process that you go through. Refactoring is something you always do. Now, once you get the experience of how you achieve the end goal, sometimes you go straight for it, right? Where it makes sense. You know the pattern. You go, okay, I'm going to do
or 80% of the way there.
Yeah, or something along there, so you don't have to go through the whole process, right? It's a learned behavior then, right? But yeah,
and Simon showed that he still knows the whole process when he started working with me, because he would take my code, and then when he was done refactoring it, I couldn't read my own code.
Like you could when you started.
Hey, there's an interesting question here. There's an interesting actual question here, and
bring up a screen.
Okay, fine, I'll read it out loud this time.
And
for Simon.
Yes.
Which is the best way to handle responsiveness and adaptability when targeting like 5 platforms? Don't like having a long nested if-else flow control. And the way that I've looked at this, unfortunately, it's kind of trading one set of if else for a different one, because I like aspect ratios and fractionally sized boxes to deal with a lot of that. But the problem now is that you're not worried about devices. You're worried about screen sizes and aspect ratios, right?
Yep.
So you need to know now, are you dealing with something square? Are you dealing with something square that's small? Are you dealing with something square that's huge? And you don't care which platform it came from. What you care about is the screen long and skinny? Is it a web browser? If it's a web browser, is it taking up half the screen at the moment? What happens when they move the window and resize the window? So what it is you're trading one set of ifs for a different set of ifs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way I would look at it. Now, this is the part where Simon looks at me and says, "You're not wrong, but," and take it away, Simon.
You know he's already thinking it.
What? Thinking what?
Yeah, right.
I said take a quick call. Sorry. In response to adaptability to target 5 platforms, it seems to have a long and nested else. Well, don't do that. That's bad. So it's obvious, right? You know that's why you asked the question. Anyway, no, I think the key here is don't be afraid of making 5 different widgets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Don't be afraid of why do you have to. So you've got the inverse behavior, right? You've got something that takes one parameter and does different logic based on that, or you've got the inverse. You've got something that is separated off those 5 bits. And then you're choosing which one to use, right? So that if else could easily be flipped around, right? There's other patterns you can do. So imagine that if else control block, you're saying perform some different logic based on the platform. We'll make a model that contains that logic, and you've got 5 instances that contain that logic, and you're passing that right object in, and it just performs that logic because it already knows what platform you're on. There's a lot of different patterns you can do. That's got a strategy pattern, I believe. There's a lot of different ways of doing these things, and again, it's just object-oriented design. There's lots of books on these subjects and information around online. There's not really one go-to solution.
It's still an art. It's an art.
Right? It is.
Yeah. And doesn't React Native just handle all this naturally? We don't have. Why are we even talking about this?
Oh yeah. What am I thinking?
Let's all switch to React.
Out of the box, you just press a button, it does it.
Yes, instantly adapts. Languages, no translation automatically built in, all that stuff. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I will say, because you're talking about refactoring earlier, I will say, even as a 30-year veteran of Perl code, I now look far much more forward to refactoring anything I've written in Flutter than now anything I've written in Perl. Much easier. I
just saw another question here. I always get confused with padding provided with container. Shouldn't there be 2 properties like inner padding and outer padding? It would be more clear. There is. It's called margin. Yeah. So you have margin is always on the outside. Padding is always on the inside. That's it.
Padding equals bubble wrap. It's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah.
Padding equals bubble wrap. Margin equals the space that you use to walk around the box.
Yeah. So this comes from the box model. I think that this idea of having margin on the outside, padding on the inside comes from the box model on web. It's been around for a long time. I think, to be clear, what's interesting is if you look at the way container works, is actually just wraps the decorated box, the thing that provides the border, with another padding. Because in the end of the day, all margin is padding on the outside of your object, not on the inside of the object. So,
which is why they take the same parameter edge insets.
Yep.
Cool.
So, and I am looking up. I am looking
another question.
I'm trying to find the shortest way to get to this.
Okay, well, While you're trying to figure that out, I'll answer this question. I use video player and WebView on the same screen. When I show a bottom navigator on top of the WebView, it flashes. It shows an error on Android. Is there a way to fix this? Thank you. It really does depend on your layout structure and how you're doing that. But what I can recommend is you wrap things in a repaint boundary. There's a repaint, which you call repaint boundary, which adds a layer in the composition engine that layers it all together, which might give you the breathing space between items so they don't re-render when another one changes. It just recomposes. So that might solve your problem. It shows an error on Android. Couldn't tell you. What you might be seeing if you show a bottom navigator on top of WebView, it might just be a case that your screen is actually changing height, and what you're getting is the overflow bars, right? So what you might be seeing there is the error is saying it doesn't have enough room, in which case you want to look at you maybe using a scaffold and having it manage the bottom navigation, or having or using a column with expanded to store and put your WebView inside the expanded.
It's what happens when two of us hit the buttons at the same time. Strategy pattern. Okay, the best I have seen for this is to go to YouTube and search for Christopher Okravi. You can misspell his last name. It's not a problem. Look up strategy pattern, design patterns. This guy has a way of explaining it that is entertaining and simple enough to understand. So it's not like trying to read the Gang of Four book. This is for humans. So again, it's Christopher Okravi, and he's got all kinds of design pattern videos on there. And just search it on YouTube.
Can I pick up another question here?
Go for it.
Can we share memory between isolates in Flutter? Main isolate and background isolate? No. That's the term isolate. It's isolated. It literally is to stop shared memory from being shared between them.
Yeah.
Like, that's the purpose of, because as soon as you share memory between two things, you need to manage that shared memory with synchronization and locking and so on.
Yes.
So
basically, an isolate is a fake. Think of it as a fake machine or a fake core. A fake thread. I call it the poor man's thread.
It's a real core. It really runs on a separate core.
But it's the same core. Anyway.
Okay, I won't get into it. But basically, it's isolated from the others. And the idea is it has its own memory and its own processing. And the only way to communicate is through a messaging interface. And this has worked really well in Golang and other languages as well. And it means that the data that you're sending has to be serialized and unserialized across the channel between them, meaning that it's duplicated at some point. But it means that each side of each ISO or each thread maintains its own copy of the data, meaning that it does never get into the synchronization problem.
Right.
So in terms of if you want to share memory, it is to send that memory. So you take your like let's say bitmap and ship it across the channel. So there's it's called send port and receive port. That's what you're going to look into.
And there is one data structure that is transferred almost transparently. It doesn't have to be reconstituted on the other side. It sort of just sits, and it's the same thing. I forget what that's called. One of those data type things.
Uintake list.
Yeah, that one. Right.
Yeah. The uintake list is the basic byte array. And as a byte array, what it can do is just give ownership. If you pass the byte array across and it knows you don't use it anymore, it literally gives that memory to the other one. It means that you can avoid the cost of copying. It's an optimization they made on purpose for that exact reason when you're shifting big blocks of data back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody's calling me out for a question I can't answer. That's always wonderful. Yeah, listen, I don't know everything. I only know all the odd numbered things. I'm still looking for the guy that knows all the even things, and we could really run the town. But I only know the odd numbered things. That must be an even numbered thing.
This is all about numbers, right? How to do paging with page numbers in Flutter. I want to show 10 items per page.
No, the one below that has my name. That's the one.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that one.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Paging?
Yes. Paging.
You want to show 10 items per page? I'm not sure I can help with that. I mean, just show you 10 items, and then when you go to the next page, you load the next 10 items. I guess.
Yeah, I don't.
I think the key here is to know when to load the next screen. I think that's what people have confusion. So imagine you've got a scrolling content and you scroll to the bottom. What you want to do is detect when you scroll to the bottom. That's the bit. Once you scroll to the bottom, then you go, oh, I want to load another 10, right? That's the bit people get confused with. And that is you create a scroll controller and you assign the scroll controller to your scrolling view, be it a list view, page view, whatever it is. And then you can add a listener to that scroll controller. When it changes, you go, is my current offset, which is controller position pixels, greater than the extent? I think it's extent after. I think I can't remember. So so it'd be content height. Is it content? I can't remember. Content dimension. That's it.
There's docs for that.
Yeah, there's docs for that. So it's scroll controller position content height, and there's before you use it, you have to go. Has the scroll controller got clients? It's got has clients as a boolean on boolean getter on the scroll controller, and then also before you access the content dimension, position has content dimensions. You have to call that before you access those variables, because then they can be nullable. But basically, yeah. And then if it's within, say, 100, pick your number between 100 of the bottom, then you're near the bottom, so load the next screen. There's some clever things you can do with cache extent. And then you can use cache extent and pass back a widget, a loading widget from your builder for your list view. And then when it gets to the last widget that's available, you throw in a loading one, and that loading one starts loading the next lot of content. That's another way of doing it. And that works well with the cache extent, which cache extent is how much information is cached off screen. So you can scroll through and you'll never get a loading thing, right?
And one of the things to keep in mind, and I just learned about this because I got asked a question about this in one of the various chat places that I patrol, and that is your API, ideally, if it's an API that has changing values, ideally has not just a start at 1, go to 10, and then you start at 11 and go to 20 for your next page, but ideally has a cursor. In other words, in a particular request, they hand back, tell me start at this cursor to get your next chunk. And what's great is then both sides are cooperating. And even if that item that was the cursor has been deleted, it still figures out it needs to start after that then. Mm-hmm. It's really, really rather smart. So look for APIs that have cursors if you think the data is going to be changing.
Or tokens. It's just
whatever it's called.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're right. The cursor is the database term, but they sometimes call them tokens or IDs. They're just like a reference to the next set of data.
That's independent of inserts and deletes, though. That's important.
Basically, not an index.
Yeah, not a number 7. That's never going to be the right thing. So yeah.
Bouncing back for just a moment to responsive design, Raph, you had found something. What is that about Robert's tutorial that you saw?
Yeah, so those are just good tips to start with the responsive design and how to do it in Flutter. So like the media queries, layout builder, how to wrap, make your own widget which will automatically wrap your content. So if someone is interested, this is a pretty good one.
Robert's done some amazing videos, and I'm now on his Discord. So there's one more set of people you can bug with questions if you want. I mean, ask your questions of Robert. I think puts the link to his Discord invite on his homepage, so you can check it out there. He's also a fresh, I believe, I'm not mixing this up. He's a fresh Flutter Web GDE or Flutter Dart.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Joining the pack. Yes.
Can I pick another question?
Sure.
This guy was talking about data tables.
Yes.
Do that data table does a lot of work in the background. When we add a lot of data inside data table, the data table is lagging so much that there are no way to increase. Is there no way to increase performance? Well, the problem with the data. So this is a problem with layout in general, right? And the problem is Let me explain the problem. Let's say you've got 10 columns. Let's say you're doing a spreadsheet. No. This is an input. It's the same as data. But
it is
10 columns, right? And you want one of those columns to expand based on the content, right? Now, if one of those columns are 100 words and the rest have 1 word, right? So the one that you want to expand, all the rows have one word in, and one of them has 10 words, right? But to get the measurement of the one that has 10, you have to go down into all of the data on all of the rows to work out what the maximum width is. You have to render every single one of those to work out what it would be in pixels to set the column width. That is a rendering problem, right? That's a layout problem. And that's what you're having with the data table, right? That's why you want to page your data. That's why paging exists. So have like 50 items and then have like next page. When you press that next page, it loads the next set of 50 items, the next set of 50 items. So that you're only ever having to do that calculation for 50 maximum, not thousands and thousands and thousands, right? And then having to enable sort of scroll through that. So yeah, the problem you're having, you'd have on Android, you'd have on iOS, you'd have on every operating system, right? This is not a Flutter issue. This is an issue of just the way you're approaching the problem, right? There's just a lot you're trying to do. You're telling the computer, I want to do all of this stuff to calculate the screen right here. They literally Excel, Microsoft Excel literally has a whole piece of software around solving these things, right?
Well, and the web, your actual original table in the web, when it was being used for layout, people did that all the time. It has to basically do this. It has to basically go down, look at all the individual cells, figure out all their sizes, and then you've got your layout.
Don't forget merge cells and spanning and everything else. Oh my goodness.
Oh God, yeah. Luckily, I don't see a widget yet that has that capability. Even the table widget isn't that smart yet. Thank God.
Maybe for good reason.
No, we've got another one here. Not touching that. Not touching it.
All right. Stand back.
Is there a difference between design patterns and app architecture? When do they matter? All right. App architecture is how you structure the entire app. A design pattern is how you solve a particular problem or how you approach a particular thing. A Flutter app in itself is usually using quite a few different patterns. For one, it's going to be using the state pattern. It also uses a composite pattern for piecing together different things. A lot of time, it's almost impossible to get away from the observer pattern, right? As far as updating your state. So right there, but how you structure the entire app using models, views, view models, using Redux, things like that. Those are going to be your app structure, which your app architecture.
I think the difference here is the level, right? At the end of the day, unidirectional data flow is a term given to that model that Redux uses, right? Yes. Redux is the name of a specific implementation of that pattern, right? But also, it's the point is, if I was just to use Redux, let's say in one widget in my app, which would be ridiculous, but let's say I was using Redux for one widget in my app, and the rest of my app use Provider. Then I might describe using Redux as a pattern, not as a architecture, because it's nothing to do with the entire app, right? When you're talking about the way that data moves around your entire app, that's the architecture, right? That's the fundamentals of how your app behaves, right? Whereas the specific behaviors that are self-contained, they're normally patterns. That's what I'd say about that.
Yeah.
I'm typing. Keep going.
We're all madly typing. It's great. Well, was there anything else left on Chris's piece here?
Well, one thing that I really enjoy, I don't know how much everyone else would like it, but being someone who gives presentations and does workshops, I really was pretty excited to see this, which is the ability to do entire workshops in Dartpad.
In Dart, yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've shown up to teach a workshop and you say, okay, does everyone have Flutter installed? No. There goes 45 minutes.
We did
and
that.
I mean,
Actually,
I'm serious.
We were trying to do that thing after Joy-Con in 2018, and we spent the first 6 hours, first at least 4 hours getting everyone set up on Flutter.
The last couple of people, yes, because there were problems. To get folks, short version of this, a bunch of us went to DroidCon together. It was a zoo crew, trust me. And the day after, we unexpectedly were asked to do some Flutter stuff for Skills Matter. So we go over there and we figure we're just going to be showing people one or two little things here and there and maybe take an hour. No, we ended up teaching a 5.5 hour workshop with rotating instructors. It's just when one person got wore out, one of the other 5 would step in and keep going.
We had everyone was like spending all the shoulders of all of like the student, like we call them students, I guess 25 people. It was like, and showing them and giving them guidance and
it was really awesome. We were winging it from nowhere and with no preparation. It was great. But this thing right here, I have gone to a number of places and it's like you have 90 minutes to 2 hours to teach a workshop. And some people will have problems installing on Windows. Some people have a problem installing on Mac. And by the time you get done getting them all set up, the workshop's over. And, this isn't fair to the people who actually took the time to be prepared. So from now on, I swear I'm going to go in and it's like, how many people don't have it installed? Good. You go to this URL. This is how you're going to follow along. When you don't, but I thought we would get help installing. No, that's what the installation page is about. So
the downside, of course, is that Dartpad is limited because it can't pull in arbitrary packages. I'm still waiting to have somebody tell me where the package list is in the source code so I can edit it for my own copy of Dartpad. I'm waiting. It's not well documented.
Remy
Simon
showed a way
exactly where it is.
Well, Remy showed a way to cheat this
for pure Dart, but not any of the plugins.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Remy showed a way to cheat it. Basically,
so that too.
when you're using Dartpad, especially from a gist, there's the main file, which is everything you can see, and then there's a test file that never gets shown. And what he did, I kid you not, is he took all the code from Provider and stuffed it into the test file. And that allowed him to run Provider in Dartpad.
Yeah, not ideal.
So it's cheesy, but it works.
I should do one of those for Riverpod. That'd be fun. Just have to tell people where it is. Yeah.
I'm gonna answer a couple more questions that come through.
Okay.
I'm unable to clear unable to clear cache in Flutter Web deployed on Firebase hosting on new version. I tried changing service worker version number with each release, but it doesn't seem to clear the cache. So what you can do, so service workers are cached independent of the browser's cache. So there's actually a Dart HTML package, which you can look at on api.dart.dev, has a service worker thing, and it actually has a way of forcing clear the current service worker to reload it, which I'd recommend looking at that as a solution to your problem. The other one is add a question mark and a number on your import statement for your main.js, right? And that ensures that the browser is requerying for main.js from your Firebase hosting. So that way, on each release, it's going. You would do main.js in your HTML index.html, main.js (1), next release 2, next release 3, and so on. Meaning that it will perform a new query for that object, and not go to the cache first. It's called a cache breaking. So it's done on purpose. I highly recommend doing that as a solution as well. But yeah, you can also comment out the service worker, and therefore you're just using directly with JavaScript. No service worker needed. It's optional.
There's somebody was asking to double check one of the questions that they asked, and actually it looks pretty interesting here. Let me hunt it down, though. It might take a little bit.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to
yes.
upload multiple images to Firebase storage is very slow. I can't upload the images in another isolate, and doing so on the main isolate is too slow. Anyway, around this, that's a good question. So, in short, you cannot upload from another isolate. Full stop. You can. Okay. The problem is you're using the Firebase plugin to do it. So uploading to Firebase storage can be done using signed URLs and other mechanisms which just require HTTP. And HTTP can be done from multiple isolates. So there are ways around that. It depends on what you're uploading. If you're uploading massive data, then yeah, it's going to take time. And ideally what you want to do is chunk your uploads, right? So you're uploading in smaller, more granular chunks. And then obviously making sure you're doing it asynchronously on your main thread. But yeah, no, if you want to upload it to an isolate and do it in the background, you can still do that. Hell, even if you wanted to, another solution is to write a plugin, which is really straightforward. Write a simple plugin for your app, and then call a native function and have the native function spit up a native thread and do it completely independently. There's also ways around this kind of stuff.
This is taking it far away from Flutter, but simple question for you, Simon. Knowing networking, the actual like Cisco, the 7 levels, all that happiness. When you send a packet, it arrives and everything's good, and you acknowledge it. So then it sends a packet that's double the size. Acknowledges, sends a packet that's double that size. Keeps getting bigger and bigger. This is why you see your speeds increasing as a download goes. But then if it fails a packet, it starts over again. When you're chunking,
not quite. Packets always remain the same size. However, the packets always remain the same size, right? They have what's called an MTU, maximum transmission unit, right? Which is the largest packet size that can be transmitted, right? And what it's more about is that there's a ping pong back and forth when you start a connection, which is quite slow on some, depending on your connection. The ramp up is more about throughput of routers along the way. They're reserving throughput. They have a very intelligent way of detecting traffic, and they will open up the gates to let your traffic come through quicker. So the ramp up you see on an upload is completely out of your control. It's not necessary to do your local network stack.
Right. But one of the things also though is every time that it does not get the data, we're restarting again. And because it's basically it's a way to make the most of the quality of the connection. The other thing though, that I've also noticed with Microsoft Flight Simulator, they're doing it all in these small files, which means every time it restarts a different file, it's restarting again slower. And what I'm wondering is if you chunk it up, are you running into that by restarting over and over? And is that actually still better than trying to do it all in one shot?
So HTTP, each time you start a HTTP connection, especially to upload data, they normally allow for a range header, which says I'm uploading this byte to this byte of my originating data. And when the server receives it, it goes, oh, you sent me byte 10 to 50. I was storing 10 to 50 in the file, but 0 to 10 is still missing. You haven't sent that yet. And it will wait until you receive 0 to 10 as a separate chunk of data, right? But no, the chunking is more about allowing you to monitor the upload, because there'll be caching and all sorts of I think it's 700 kilobytes is the upload chunk size on on Android, meaning that literally is, if you send something smaller than 700 kilobytes, it's sent in one go by the networking stack on Android. It still gets split up into packets of 1.5K, right?
Right.
But the point here is that you don't see upload progress. You're just going to see, bam, wait, and then done. And you're like, where was my progress? I didn't see it upload, right? Because there's overhead with adding those smaller chunks in. But then again, you're not paused for a long period of time doing your upload, right? So the idea of chunking it up is more about when you're doing a long-term upload, something that takes a long, let's say a couple hundred megabytes, and you have to let that progress go forward. There's other things you can do. You can do like uploading the background, using the platform background features. Both iOS and Android have background features and services to enable you to do that, and have like a system notification saying uploading. It depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, and in general, you're going to be using, features to do that. One of the things that was suggested in the channel is that if you're trying to upload 5 files, and each one's giving you back a feature, don't go await the first one, await the second one, await the third one, await the fourth one, await the fifth one. Future has a static method called what is it?
Dot wait.
Is it wait? Okay.
Wait.
Which basically takes a list.
Oh, future.
Not wait. Wait.
Wait. Yeah. I was confirming. Yes. Right.
Oh no, I was just making sure that people listening understood. There's
good plan.
Future dot wait.
Yes.
Does not have an A.
Yes. It does in the middle. Dad joke number 2.
Somebody kick in.
I got a red card on the last one. So yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. And some of the stuff that Scott was talking about, like the MTU discovery algorithm, it happens generally only once on a TCP connection.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
It's pretty fast. And then it never changes unless somehow they start getting rerouted. And this is done by allowing ICMP packets back to your server or back to your client. Never block ICMP. I don't know why people keep doing that. You got to let ICMP through.
Yeah. It's also BGP routing online and some other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like I said, we went way away from Flutter. Let's pull it back. There's an interesting question here, which I was just about to put in the chat.
Ooh, JSON.
Okay.
Ew.
Yeah, can I send an image in a string format in JSON key as I'm doing in Java? Yes, but why would you ever want to do that? The idea there is you'd base 64. Base 64 converts your image into a text, and then your text can be put into a JSON key. But don't do that. Please don't do that.
No.
Unless you have to.
If you're going to send an upload like that, don't use JSON for your encoding body. Yeah. Most places also support form encoding for that sort of thing. So you would basically put it as one slot of a form in the way we used to all do it on the web, which is, remember the classic forms. Then you had like a file pop up that you could say, send this file as well in this form. That mechanism is still there for a lot of servers.
That's form data, and there's also multi-part MIME.
Multi-part MIME, yes. A MIME is a terrible thing to waste. So be careful. 3! I got 3 in now. All right.
Out of here. All right. Now, this is kind of in 2 parts because there was some clarification.
Okay.
We're talking about passing a controller basically from one route to another. So the entire screen changes. Said it works, but you can't perform any functions on it, such as the video is playing on the first page, passing its controller to the next page, and then trying to do something on it. Well, first of all, the video is gone when you route to the second page, isn't it? Because you change pages.
This can happen. I'm just don't understand why you want to pass the controller.
Yeah, because it's like you would have to use the same controller for a second video.
No. I think the problem here is they're passing the controller to access the functions, and what they should be doing is passing a function to access the controller, right? So you would have a callback function. So when you press pause on the other screen, right, it calls the pause function on the original controller. You're not passing the controller object across, right? You're passing a mechanism to call the controller. right? And I think that's the difference. So you'd normally pass a void callback, which is a function, so that when pause happens, it's calling a pause function on the original widget or on the original controller. But yeah, it's I don't know your exact thing that you're trying to do here, but pass the controller between screens. I suspect what's happening right now is you're doing that. The original ones getting disposed of because the dispose method of the widget's getting called, and you get widget.controller.dispose. It's killing the video, and then on the new screen, you're trying to do pause, and now the controller doesn't exist anymore.
That's what I'm thinking is because when it ran, when the first route was closed down, like as Simon said, it's basically going to go through and do destruction and dispose on everything. So, and that's before the new route is created. So I don't understand why trying to pass it is actually working if it's already been destroyed.
The follow-up question. Callback, of course, works. So use that. But for one reason, does Flutter not support? It does support this kind of passing the controller. You're just not doing it right. Sorry. There's no harm in passing an object across. It's just how you're approaching that. And I, without any specifics, I couldn't tell you.
And also,
it wouldn't work.
The controller has its arms and legs inside the page that you're on. It has to have connections to some of that.
Not necessarily. Sorry, this is a video controller. This is not, and this is just controls the connection to the video plugin, and you can pass that around. But it's a bad principle to do that. Why would you want to pass?
Right. Well, okay. This is something I see software people getting into all the time, and it's a bit of a trap. Now, this is from coming outside of software. Instead of saying, why isn't X working, or why would we want to do it that way, do us a favor in the chat. Forget about code. Tell us what you're trying to do. Right? Are you trying to pass a video from one route to another and still have it be continuous? I don't know. Put this in terms that my dog can understand, and my dog doesn't know Dart. So
you should teach him. He can help you out.
Yeah. But the thing is if we know what you're trying to achieve, sometimes that's the best thing, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Any recommendations for key value storage solutions that stay in sync over multiple isolates, main and background, share preferences, and others work on the initial copy that doesn't update? Okay, I'll give you the answer to this. It's really simple. A file. I'm sorry. I mean, it's that simple, right? Like, you can either send a copy, you want it to so that you've got multiple isolates can work with the data, or have them access a file and work with the data, but you're still trying to share, right? So then you need to manage the communication or exclusively lock, and then there are some ways you can wait loop and wait lock loop the files and some other mechanisms. But the point here, the matter is, at the same time, the reason why shared preferences doesn't work, by the way, is it's only the main isolate that can manage the plugins. So anything to do with the plugin won't work. And anyway, shared preferences, do you know how it works? It takes your key value pairs, encodes them to XML, and sticks them in a file.
Yeah.
So skip the plugin thing altogether and just take your key value pairs, put them into JSON, and put them in a file. Then from the other isolate, you can then send a message over and saying updated. The file's been updated to the other isolate. The other isolate reads the file, decodes the JSON, and now has the update key value pairs, right? And you can do that both ways, right? Done.
You didn't mention though that the file has to be on a floppy, did you?
Right, dude. Someone asked me what the picture is the other day. I'm like, that's a floppy disk, and they're like, what's that? And I'm like, oh my god, that's so old.
We're getting old.
Getting?
Yeah.
Getting?
You're the one with the white hair, grey beards.
Yep, gray beard. Not white hair that you can see.
Okay, so we need to pause the top video. This is a video on the page that you've left.
Anyway, well, are you in something like? Oh, are you talking about?
Yeah,
this?
No, it's
the top.
This is what he's trying to achieve. But I don't. I mean,
So
if
here's the
it's
thing.
a
I'll tell you what the
different
problem is.
page, then the old page is gone.
I'll tell you exactly what your problem is. You put the state in the widgets.
Yeah.
Lift the state out. And then you have multiple widgets accessing the same state. That's simple.
There you go.
So put your video. So when you create your video controller, store it in an object that's outside the hierarchy, right? That you access through the hierarchy, i.e., provider, right? So if you had
this is where Randall says RiverPod
or RiverPod, whatever, but you have a class that is, let's say, a change notifier that has your video controller in it, and then when it gets created, it just does notify listeners or something change notify listeners, and then all those widgets can listen and access the same object. It's nice and simple. Well,
0 days of RiverPod free conversation.
So what was this one? I faced an issue. I have buttons. We have buttons and actions of app bar, and if we navigate there, dispose doesn't get called. Deactivate does, because they're removed. So deactivate because they're removed from the hierarchy, but they're not disposed from the hierarchy. They've not been removed. Every widget that you've got that you push on top is still there below, right? When you push something on top of the screen, it can be transparent. It can draw through. There's other mechanisms. It doesn't. It's not like another activity on Android where it's completely isolated from the rest of the system. It's not a component, right? So you don't get dispose call on what's underneath. Deactivate tells you the widget has now been deactivated. It's no longer active, right? The other one is share the actions. If you're trying to share the app, you can share the app bar between screens. So when you go to the next screen, the app bar remains.
Yep.
Then you don't have that problem as well. I don't know what you're trying to do, but
do we dare touch the state management question here? Let's skip right over that one. Constants.
Okay, come on, somebody else.
I put them in a box.
Hey, Groove and Chip. Hey, Groove and Chip. Hey, Ruben.
Constant.dart. Exactly. Put them all in constant.dart.
Makes sense.
I remember hearing a conversation.
Personally, I make an app folder for stuff like that. That is, I go lib app, and then inside my app, I do all of my app strings in one file as constants.
Oh, you're talking about this one?
Yeah, I can do, sometimes I do app strings that way if I don't have to do localization. Definitely do colors, themes, and all those constants.
What you've just described there is the difference between coming from iOS and Android native, because they have a prescribed mechanism of you providing assets to the operating system, widgets and
resources,
right?
Yeah,
which is a resource management system. Whereas in Flutter, it's up to around. Okay, use whatever you want. You can get the data however you want. It's your choice, and that's what gets a lot of developers frozen. Like, oh, but how do I do this, right? And the answer is, you get to choose and also or look by example, right? So at the end of the day,
not always a good thing,
right? But the difference here is it does give you the freedom, whereas when you're stuck on the native path, you have to do it their way, right? Or you can't use any of this stuff, right? So, yeah.
I first learned the phrase about constants when I was learning Pascal 40 years ago. And there was const, and the teacher was trying to explain what const was about. He says, well, you put in a const anything you might want to change. It's like,
anything you might want to change?
Yes.
Yeah. He obviously didn't know.
Okay. And that's when people are saying, how do I structure my app? How do I do my folders? Where do I put my const? Where do I do this? That's the beauty and the terror of Flutter is it has the flexibility to do it any way you want. Now, people have been suggesting guidelines. The problem with doing the guidelines is that if you use different state management systems, then you have to use different folder structures. The folder structure you're going to use for provider or RiverPod is not the folder structure you're going to use for block.
I think we need to pick up where. Do you remember Rat Payne started doing the Flutter community Android style Flutter style guide?
Style guide.
Yeah. We should pick that back up again because there's a lot of this information which, if presented in a documented fashion, would be very helpful for sure.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there a working group trying to put together some suggestions?
That was a long time ago. I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the big problems with a lot of these things, folks, is that volunteers were starting, and now that Flutter has exploded, everybody's got so many clients and so many different things going on. I don't know anybody with less than 2 things going on at the same time, whether they're paying gigs or volunteer gigs or something. And everybody's up to here. So really, when you want something done in Flutter, one of the best ways to do it is to, pitch in. Speaking of people who pitch in, when you do pitch in, a lot of times if people like your work, you get a cookie.
Yay.
So, okay.
That was really go on. There we go. Grooving chip, man.
Grooving chip,
nice.
cookie chip.
Great.
Very good. Very good.
Do we all get cookies?
See, Randall's
now?
not the only one who can tell lousy jokes.
Very good.
None
How
of
you guys
mine were
doing?
lousy. Come on. Yeah. Hey, Groovin.
How's everybody
Ask
doing?
your own about that. He'll be the judge of whether you got red carded last time.
Yep. It's true.
Right. I'm gonna have to start wrapping up for myself, but you guys can stick around if you
Actually, yeah, and I've
to wrap up, too.
got a meeting coming up.
I've got stuff to do.
Sorry,
So,
Ruben,
yeah,
you got your
actually-
last on the end of this.
Ruben,
Let's get it
because of you.
Let's you chip.
Just give him the controls. He can run the
Yes,
whole
enough.
show. Let him do it. Just give him the login. Let him do it. Yay.
Let's see. I'm trying to look around my camera. I have my camera in the middle of my screen. It's on a flexi arm. See this?
Yeah.
You're
Like
giving away that
everybody
you have
said.
a virtual background. Stop it.
Yeah. I was like, how's that?
Your whole house
How
is
does
shaking.
anyone
What's going
not
on?
notice that?
It's how
I'll
the
just say
how,
real
was it
quick
how,
before you guys go.
how Star Trek did it, right? Move the camera.
Before you guys go, that style guide idea,
Yeah.
good.
So Griffin, when are you going to do it then? So,
There you go. Boom.
Yeah.
Volunteered.
I will look forward to when you finish that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll put that on the pile with macOS UI and other
Yeah.
projects.
Oh, yeah.
And
Let's work with that, by the way. That looks awesome. This is the thing, like as soon as you even this, the Humpday chat, you add your work, everything else, and before you know it, it's like there's just zero time, and you can't.
Well, and that's we're all
There's
sitting
just so
here.
much to
Simon
do.
came in late because he was in a meeting. I'm
Right.
looking at that. I've got a meeting. Nash is not here right now because he can't seem to get out of meetings.
Well, put it this way: the last
No.
2 weeks, I've been doing 15-hour work days.
Yeah.
And weekends.
Work days, 15
Yeah.
hours a day,
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, 15. No, 15. 1-5. But I'm joking. Like it's on average 15 hours a day. I'm completely.
And it's hard because you get burned out.
Yeah. To be careful.
But
Crunch
but one fun thing from my old life, I used to help run different organizations, and sometimes at the board meetings, you would have people come up and just complain, and they would sit there and say what they wanted, and they thought that the group was doing this terribly, and it should be this other way, and they expected everybody else to do the work to make it the way they wanted. So one day, this guy's up there complaining just to complain, only that's not the word we normally use for it. But he's complaining, and a buddy of mine had the brilliant idea. He looks at him and he says, you seem to have put a lot of thought into this and really, really looked into it. And you know a lot more than anybody else. So you're the perfect person to take this on. So look, we're going to have another board meeting in 30 days. We need to have a report on the state of the way things are, the way you think things should be, what resources are you going to need, how much time do you think it's going to take, what's the budget going to be, do we have to hire any contractors, and what other expenses might we have. And like I said, we're going to be coming back in 4 weeks, so I look forward to your report. And he started trying to backpedal. And no, the rest of the board piled on, and it was like, no, you brought this up, you own it. So, and that's kind of what it is in Flutter right now. So Chip, you own it.
I did that already. I did that. I did that with Mac OS UI. I did it already.
So now we can jump to the next thing.
Yeah, next victim. Who's the next victim?
Where's my juggling balls?
Yeah, really.
Plates on sticks.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's.
You
got any more questions? Last minute questions? Get me
That's
now.
it. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Gates coming down. Gates coming down.
Does anybody know what this is? I don't know.
Material U, the new idea of theming that crosses multiple apps, right? So in the operating system, you can choose blue, and all the apps turn blue, right?
Okay.
I doubt.
For the new Android.
I doubt there'll be another app because it'll just be a flag that you enable, like the dark mode, right? It'll just be like, oh no, I want to enable Material U, and then your theme, I suspect, would change. And that would be how I would implement it. But that's just a big guess because
for a preview, you can take a look at what Mike Ridstrom is doing with his Flex color scheme. He's already.
Oh yeah, because
he's already getting on that.
Awesome. Yeah.
So this will be yet another way that I'll have to figure out where to set that I want this button to be red.
So
there's already like 9 places to look.
I do.
I think the idea is that your code, like the widgets, will automatically receive that red when you set it in the system or something.
Yeah, good luck though. I mean, to even get it all the way through.
I've done it. I used to have this problem with, and I still essentially do, but the material widgets, when you go, okay, I need to know when I pressed, how do I change the disabled state?
yeah.
So you go, you there's no parameter for that. So then it must come from the theme. But what theme value does it do, and how do I override that theme value? So you have to go hunting in the code to find it. Which is not good. That's always been so bad from Flutter day one. So that's why they started doing was one of the many reasons that they did the new buttons. You now have elevated button, outline button, text button to replace the original raise button and whatever the other ones were. I've completely forgotten.
Yeah.
And they use a really nice mechanism where you can actually apply different material states and have different responses for the properties come back. Once you're used to the new pattern, it's really good, and I think that we'll probably be seeing more of that and a lot of the other widgets to come.
I've wanted to have a file
pattern really, but that whole theme, I've always wanted to add custom parameters to the theming. But theming is the way it's built right now is I think it's not final, but you have to like pass all the parameters across the constructor. It's a nightmare. It doesn't extend. It doesn't lay itself to be extensible. So the way I always do it is just make my own app theme, and then it could be like an inherited widget and just pass it down and you can access it everywhere. Job done.
Yeah.
It's just like pass with properties.
And that's what we do in Mac OS UI. We have a custom inherited widget, and we have our own Mac OS theme data, just the way that Material does it, but just for Mac components.
Yeah.
And the Fluent UI package does the same thing.
I think the key here is a lot of people try and use the Material widgets and go and try and bend it to their way they want it, right? I don't want this big padding. I don't want the elevation to animate when I press the button. That's the wrong approach. The approach is I'm going to build it myself over here because it's not complicated to build. But you need to understand the components, like a container, an inkwell, a material widget, so it gets the ripple effect, or gesture detector to get the tap event, whatever it is. And you need to be able to do that yourself. And I think that's the key. A lot of the time, building up those fundamental, what would you call it? Building blocks of any app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've got those, you can reuse those components across your application.
Yeah.
But again, it's simple. I say it sounds like it's complicated. Flutter, I have to say, has made it even simpler than any other platform I've worked with. Right, to do that customization, and it's because of the reactive UI, the declarative UI, and the composition pattern that they use for UI. Right, makes it super simple.
I want to use Flutter 95, the theme for that.
Yeah.
In some upcoming client application, just to be the first release to
I
him.
think
would be
Luke
this.
Spaghetti toyed around with it after, like, I showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" And he went and toyed around a little bit.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Or just to walk around with a bespoke app that just has that, so I can play around with it, and somebody's looking over my shoulder. What? That would be cool.
So
I've been wishing for like I've been wishing for like a Windows Phone type like tile like launcher. Like I know they exist on Android, but I've been like wanting to see it done in Flutter. You know, like with the live tiles that like flipped around and like showed notifications and stuff.
I want Clippy.
That UI's called Metro.
Yeah.
And I think there might be some stuff already done on that. So if you look up Flutter Metro.
Flutter Metro? Ooh.
I seem to remember, it was a long, long time ago, though. It was when, it would have been 2018.
Oh, the dark days.
So,
before time.
I want to see.
Yes.
Want to see?
Sorry, I trailed off there. Yeah, no, I want to see like a really great Android launcher made in Flutter with that does like the Metro tiles. That would be amazing.
Do you know what? I should probably do that, right? I've done a couple of launches, Android.
Like
launches
you have time.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I have time, right? Oh, that'd be fun.
I'm not seeing anything on Google about that.
Okay. We're coming up on 2.5 hours, Scott. Do you think maybe
Yeah, one quick one here.
Oh yeah.
You know,
No
news.
Not that I've heard of, but the other thing too, I mean, I don't know how much priority the team is putting on it, but I know a lot of developers who are just kind of shrugging because really I do something, I hit save and it's like a lot of times it'll update automatically, but even if it does, I just Alt Tab, hit F5 and Alt Tab back and I keep going. I mean, it just
Hot Restart always works.
Doesn't slow me down.
Hot Restart will always work. Hot Reload will not. And I think it's mainly about the way that the JavaScript system works inside the browsers. It makes it a lot more complicated proposition.
There's probably there's data that's sitting inside closures. I think that's the biggest problem. Yeah. There's no JavaScript access to the guts of a closure, and by design. Whereas the VM, the Dart built VM, certainly they can have access to anything they want.
Yeah. So as a way around, like if you're working on something on web that's 2 or 3 layers deep, 2 or 3 pages deep, and you don't want to keep getting reset, personally, what I would do is while you're developing is I would have my main function point there to begin with.
Right.
Or, have my app point there instead of pointing to something else.
Exactly. You can always develop a widget or a module or a section independently of the rest of your app. If that should be accessible to you to do as a developer if you've isolated your components, right?
And also there's if I don't know about VS Code, but if you're using Android Studio or IntelliJ, you have configurations. You can make a configuration
JSON.
and have it. You can also make different main files that will go to different parts of your app, and you just tell it in the configuration which main file to start when you run. So use different ones while you're
you can do Flutter run -t and then whatever the Dart file is, and it'll run that as your main entry point, so main.dart.
So, all right, 2.5 hours. Once again, we've talked way too much.
Yeah.
Nice to see everyone.
Yeah.
You guys.
I'm gonna get some rest.
Yes. Sorry you didn't get here sooner, Chip, but definitely next time.
Next time.
And one word of warning to everyone. We were a little busy with trying to do work for our clients and such, and for the people who actually pay us. So we did not get another slide made for today with today's date on it. So you get to see the one for the 12th of May all over again.
Yeah.
And with that, see ya.
See you next week, hopefully.
Hi,
and
everyone.
earlier. I've got some presentations coming up this week. So yes, always. All right.
Yeah.
you.